So you want your car to go from a slow, boring piece of crap like this to a fast, proper track car like this. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to do just that, and it's only going to cost you about 5 PI. So obviously, before tuning your car, you're going to want to upgrade it. The first upgrade I do to all of my cars is the front and rear anti-roll bar. The reason for this, if you look in the top right, there's no PI change, and you unlock the tuning ability for the front and rear anti-roll bars. Next up is the springs and dampers. Again, for 1 PI, you unlock the tuning ability for your springs and dampers. It's as simple as that. Then I head on over to the drivetrain tab and I upgrade my transmission. What this is going to do for 3 PI is allow us to change the ratio of each individual gear. Next up is the differential. I put a race differential on at a cost of no PI, and this is going to allow us to lock and unlock the diff. More on that later. Then I upgrade the clutch at a cost of 1 PI. I put a race clutch in. What this does is reduce shift times, which is absolutely key, especially when you're going around a corner. Then I upgrade the driveline, or to me and you, the prop shaft. What this does is reduce rotating mass at a cost of 1 PI, and it allows your engine to spin up that little bit faster. The next upgrade I do to all of my cars is the wheels. Again, that rotating mass, you're going to want to reduce it, and a good way to do that is with the wheels. So I quite like these Wantanabes or Wantanabes, however you want to call it. They only reduce the weight by about £3, but it's at no PI cost. The next upgrade I do is the flywheel. Again, it's about that rotating mass, and at 1 PI cost, you're going to allow your engine to spin up that little bit faster. Then I head on back over to the platform and handling, and you can actually upgrade your brakes to little to no PI. I don't understand why this is, because obviously brakes are one of the most important things on the car, but for 1 PI cost, you can upgrade your brakes to race. It doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. Take advantage of this. Put this on pretty much every car. So next up is the aero and appearance. This is personal preference, and on a car this slow you can probably get away with not having any aero, but I do like to adjust the downforce as I see fit. So I do put the spoiler on pretty much all of my cars and the front bumper, even though honestly the spoiler in this game, it looks so bad. It looks absolutely terrible, and it's the same in Horizon as well. I don't really know what Turn 10 are thinking making this, but like I say, it unlocks that tuning potential, and I think it's taking my PI down to. Obviously this reduction in speed can be negated by adding an air filter or a small engine modification. So after the rear wing, I head on over to the front bumper, and it's a similar thing, a reduction of 1 PI. It looks terrible, but it does give you that downforce tuning ability, so I do go for it. So this car, I actually do want to keep an E-Class, so I'm not going to go mad on the engine modifications. I'm just going to get it up to 300 PI, and I can do that just with an air filter. Air filters are good because they do allow the engine to breathe more, and you get a more power and torque, but also reduce weight. So that's it for 13 PI. You can see the difference in acceleration, handling and braking. That's without any tune. We're going to go ahead and tune the car, and it is honestly going to completely change. So you've modified your car and you want to put a tune on it. We'll come to the tuning setup, and the first tab you're going to come across is the tyres. As a general rule of thumb, the lower the pressure, the more grip you're going to get. The higher the pressure, the more responsive the car's going to be, but you will be subject to a lot of oversteer and a lot of understeer. What I like to do is put them on about 28 PSI, and then use the telemetry later on whilst we're racing to then fine adjust the tyre pressure as I see fit. Next up is the alignment. I'll quickly run through this, but this is again something that you're going to need to use the telemetry to perfect it. You want a little bit of negative camber on the front. What this is going to do is as you go around the corner and you steer, it's going to actually make your wheel stand up straight and give you the most amount of grip. On the rear, what this is going to do is as the body rolls over, you're going to roll over and gain a little bit of positive camber, making your wheel stand up in the corners, giving you more grip. Now, the amount of negative camber you're going to want to use depends on how hard your springs are. If you've got really soft springs, you might want to run a little bit more negative camber, but if they're really hard, you can get away with just a little bit less negative camber. As for the toe, the more toe out you have on the front, the more responsive your car is going to be to turn into the corners, but it can be very, very snappy and give you a lot of oversteer. As for the rear, it's the same thing. The more toe out you have, the more snappy your car is going to be, but it's going to be very, very unpredictable and very unstable, which is why I go the other way. To make it more stable and more predictable, I actually have a little bit of toe in on the front. 0.5 is normally where I start, but about 0.3 seems to be the sweet spot. As for the caster, this is again how responsive the car's going to be turning into a corner, but also on transitions from left to right, how quick it's going to be and how stable it's going to be. Too much of this and you can start oversteering quite badly. So just quickly, anti-roll bars, exactly what it says on the tin. They stop your car from rolling. I like to have quite a bit of anti-roll bar in the front just because it stops the weight transfer of the engine coming in and out of corners. It can throw your car off balance, so I quite like these quite stiff. In the rear, you can get away with softer anti-roll bars, and it's exactly the same with the springs. Stiffer on the front because you generally got more weight up the front, and in the rears you can get away with slightly softer. As for the ride height, lower the better really. You can't really go too low. The only issue you'll have is if you go over big bumps, you might bottom out a little bit, or if you're cutting the corners, you're cutting the curbs, you can hit the underside of your car, but generally as low as you can go. So as for the dampening, this is a little bit like the anti-roll bars and the springs. On the front, you can get away with a little bit stiffer. On the rears, you can get away with a little bit softer. Just quickly, the bump stiffness is how fast the suspension compresses, and the rebound stiffness is how far the suspension extends. Next up is suspension geometry. This is something that I don't really mess about with. I'll make a little tiny adjustment to the rear and that's it, because any adjustment to the front seems to just wreck the car, honestly. If you put it towards the high, you just understeer. And if you put it anywhere towards the low, then you just oversteer and it's just uncontrollable. But I have found just a little tiny bit towards the high in the rear does make it so the car's kind of more responsive, but you don't get too much oversteer. As for the aero, this is personal preference, speed versus cornering. On this specific track, I've got it set all the way to speed. If there's a lot of corners and it's quite a slow track, then I will put it all the way up to cornering. But on this track, it's quite fast. I can get away with all the way to speed. I can even take them off, but that would mean having to mess about even more with the performance, and I don't really want to do that. So for this track, I set it all the way to speed. Any slower tracks, I'll set it all the way to cornering. Next up is the brakes. Honestly, you don't need to touch this. It's fine as it is. Next up is the diff. Now I've got the acceleration set on 85%. What this means is under 85% of acceleration, the diff is going to be locked. What I mean by locked is the power goes to both rear wheels. If it's completely unlocked or set to 0%, what this means is all the power can go to one wheel individually. You don't want this because it can lead to spinning and it can lead to unpredictability and give you a really bad time going from left to right. Now the reason you have it unlocked or slightly more unlocked on deceleration is you actually get a little bit more grip. When you're coming up to a corner and you're decelerating, if the diff is locked, then the car will want to go straight ahead, which is why you unlock it quite a bit more. Okay, so now we're actually racing and I've brought up the telemetry. If you don't know how to do this, it's down on the D-pad, and then you can cycle through the different settings with left and right on the D-pad as well. So what I'm going to focus on for this video is this one here, tyres, misc, and first of all we're going to look at the PSI. I think we've got this set to about 28, and as the temperature heats up, obviously so does the pressure. What we're going to want is about 30 to 32 PSI when they're warm. So you can see the temperature here is it's hovering around about 78 on the front, 75 for the rear, and they're not going up too much. So what I can do is head on over to the tune car, and then I can adjust these a little bit. So I want it to be at about 30 to 32. So I'll set it to 30 and we'll head back out. Okay, so now they're warm again and we've adjusted it to 30 PSI. We can see it's hovering around about 31 PSI, which is perfect. That's a good balance between grip and responsiveness. So I'm going to leave my tyres at 30 PSI, which actually is what they come anyway. Yeah, 31 PSI is brilliant when they're up to temperature. So the next thing I adjust is going to be the gears. The idea is as you change up a gear, you don't want the revs to drop out the power. So on this car, peak power is between 5.5 and 7,000 RPM. So when I change up a gear, I don't want the revs to drop below 5,500 RPM. I'll show you exactly what I mean now. So as you change up, you see I'm going to about 6,000 RPM as I change up. If I was to go all the way below 5, you can hear the engine note now. The car's really starting to struggle and you're not going very fast. You're not accelerating very fast. So once again, change up a gear and I'm still in the power. Still in the power. So if we head over into the gearing tab, you can see my ratios here. If you're falling out of the power, what you're going to want to do is make the difference in ratio between the two gears smaller. So you can see between first and second, the difference is 0.5. If you're dropping out of the power, make that shorter. So either make first gear closer to second by increasing the speed, or make second gear closer to first by increasing the acceleration. What you then want to do is make sure that between second and third gear, you're also not dropping out of the power. So if you adjust one gear, you're going to want to go back and make sure that all the other ratios are still in alignment and you're good to go. So this was just a quick video on showing you how to upgrade your car for virtually free. In another video, I'll show you how to use the telemetry properly and adjust things like camber and caster. I hope this video did help you out just a little bit, showing you those upgrades that you can do and it won't actually cost you any PI. So I hope it did help. Please leave a comment below. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.